The red carpet's in, photographers shout at celebrities, and lights flash. At the 77th Venice Film Festival, it might look like nothing has changed in the world, until you see the face masks being held and security taking people's temperatures. COVID-19 has forced the cancellation of many events and stripped most of 2020 of any fun. But the Venice Film Festival is persevering, especially after Italy gained notoriety earlier this year as a hotspot for the virus.
I think, it's so great that there's so many heads of festivals all over the world coming to support Venice and realising that in fact it's supporting various different facets of the same industry. So I think it feels very collegiate, actually, in a way that maybe it hasn't before, less territorial. But yes, it's a very different festival to Cannes, and this is a particularly special iteration,
The festival opened with a romantic drama called Lacci by director Daniele Lucetti. Set in 1980s Naples and Rome, the film is about a marriage in crisis. The festival also premiered activist Greta Thunberg's biopic. And director Pedro Almodóvar's short film The Human Voice will also be shown. It has Tilda Swinton playing a woman who talks on the phone with her lover for the very last time.
I don't speak Spanish, but as Pedro and I have discussed many times, there's this language of cinema which is a complicity between us, and it's incredibly proud moment for me to sit beside him. Between these two, it's literally a dream come true.
When asked about the coronavirus measures, Almodóvar likened lockdowns to a form of imprisonment. He says the antidote is the cinema. And he's been vocal about how streaming films isn't the same as watching them in a theatre. And in the same vein, the director of the festival, Alberto Barbera, urged people to go to the cinema and help them stay in business.
After so many months of lockdown and closure, we must regain the courage to reopen cinemas, to start producing films again, to produce good products, to convince audiences that it's time to get out of the house and go to the cinema again. We just have to do it safely and with all due caution, as we will do here in Venice over the next few days.
So, by that logic, perhaps we should all go to the theatre wearing a face mask made for Tilda Swinton. Swanky for sure, but probably not that safe.
Let's talk to film critic John Bleasdale. Hi John. So you are there in Venice at the moment. So tell me how the atmosphere is like. How different does it feel from a normal Venice Film Festival?
Well, it feels absolutely different. There are much fewer critics. There is the cinemas are half empty because of social distancing, and there isn't the same sort of gathering of everybody together that you usually get. For instance, there's no queuing this year, and the queues are often when you have the most interesting conversations. So it is an extremely different festival in many ways.
Mm-hmm. So you said that the theaters are half empty, but then there are a lot more screenings. So all in all, do you think the attendance is down, like much down?
I think it is. I haven't seen the official figures yet, but in terms of the international press, especially from places like America and Great Britain, then there are very few of those press, of those journalists. You have quite a few other Italian cinema lovers who are filling up some of those gaps. But there are more screenings, and so it's not difficult to get to see the films, even though the capacity of the theatres to show them has been halved.
Okay, so talk us through the measures there. What kind of measures have they taken due to COVID-19?
So when you enter the festival area, which is like a small village, if you like, your temperature is checked, and then there are normal security measures which existed before COVID-19, which were security checks and everything. Inside the area, you have to wear a mask the whole time. There's no queuing for screenings anymore. You have to book everything on the internet 2 or 3 days before the film's show, and that way there's no point in queuing. You can just walk in and find your seat. There's hand sanitizer everywhere, which we all use. And when you're in the cinema watching the movies, you wear your mask for the whole thing.
Okay, so these are all great, but then there is never a 100% safety. So do you feel like it was worth going there?
Personally, yes. I feel that as with all of us, we've all been suffering from lockdown. I think Italy has been very good at containing the epidemic, the pandemic, so far. And I got a feeling that it might not take place. But as soon as we actually got started, then despite all these measures, when the lights go down and the film starts, it takes you away. And boy, do we need taking away at the moment.
Okay, so you said that not many members of the international community is there at the moment, and Italians are filling up the theaters. So do you think that there is a little bit more of a localized feel there?
No, actually, maybe I would correct what I said earlier. There definitely is less and less, say, Americans, Australians, Canadians. But there are still, I mean, the world is a big place, and there are plenty of places which have dealt with the pandemic much better than the UK and the US has. So there are still lots of journalists from those countries. So it still feels like an international film festival, absolutely.
Okay, but then the opening movie, for the first time in a long while, it is an Italian movie in Venice, Daniele Lucetti's Lacci. How do you feel about this? Do you think it was a good choice? And is this actually a sign that the festival might be getting a little bit more localized in the future, and other festivals as well, of course?
I think in the past, in the relatively recent past, Venice has had almost a tradition of opening with a really big bang. So you've had La La Land, you've had Gravity, you've had Birdman, you've had all these big movies which have gone on to win Oscars as well. But this isn't necessarily usual. Often the opening film, for instance, the opening film at Cannes is often quite a disappointing film. It's maybe something commercial but not particularly interesting. So having this opportunity and using the Italian film Lacci, which is translated in English as The Ties, I wasn't surprised by that particularly. Personally, I wasn't a big fan of the film. It's a very fraught sort of family melodrama, and it was a little bit too sort of hyperbolic for my tastes.
And what were you a big fan of then?
In the main competition, I really enjoyed an Indian film by the director of Court called The Disciple, which is about a singer of classical Indian music who is just not very good. I mean, he's not awful, he's not terrible, but he's mediocre. And he's devoted to his music, and he sacrifices everything for his music, and that's all he sees himself as being. And it's very interesting because a lot of us struggle with mediocrity, I'm afraid, and we all often have aspirations which are higher than our abilities. And it's a really honest, funny, sad movie all at the same time. I really loved it.
And have you seen Almodovar's short movie, The Human Voice?
Yes, it was. It's a 30-minute movie, so although it's it's not a short. It stars Tilda Swinton as a woman on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and if that sounds familiar, it very much feels like he's revisiting one of his earlier iconic works. And it's funny, it's amusing, it's got something to say. It's also slight, let's say. I mean, it's a lockdown movie. He filmed it in lockdown, and with those limited resources, you could say he's done something which is fun and enjoyable. It looked a lot of fun to make as well.
Okay, so John, before we wrap up, and now that you're there in Venice Film Festival, which is really the first film festival to happen after the global pandemic, do you feel like other festivals in the calendar should be happening physically as well?
I think it just very much depends on the context and the location. I mean, the next major festival will be in San Sebastian in Spain, but Spain is not at the same place that Italy is in terms of COVID. I think we will have to see where the pandemic is in terms of the winter season. The flu season is coming upon us as well, and we'll just have to judge it geographically. I can see Cannes will be Berlin and Cannes also will be looking at what Venice achieved and will be taking lessons. And really, hats off to the Italians. They've done a really good job of organizing this. And I must say, they've been very, very, I mean, I spent some time in England recently, and they're much better at wearing masks and things like that. And if we want to get out of it, then these kinds of safety measures have to be accepted and respected by everyone, I feel.
Okay then, John Bleasdale, thanks so much for joining us today, and let's see how the festival scene is going to unfold.